I've always looked at trading as a business where you're paid for, leveraging the opportunity, not working a number of hours. If you need to go ahead and delete stuff like Twitter, go ahead and do it. I used to do a lot of this too, which is the thoughts of the day. So now I do a little bit even more in depth, like I was talking about, like, the entry, the exit and stuff like that. The biggest issue that people have when they're journaling is
extremely curious about how you actually trade.
As far as like the actual style of my trading goes, I am.
Welcome back everyone to Process Over Profits. Today I'm joined by Yash, who has made a record-breaking profit of achieving 122K in one single week. And today we're going to unpack the process behind it all. Yash, obviously I appreciate you being here. Let's jump in. Let's, introduce yourself. How'd you get all started in this?
Awesome. And well, thank you for having me, first of all. But yeah, I mean, I've been trading for almost 6 years now. I started in high school when I was around like 16, 17 years old. And right now I'm like 21. It's been an interesting journey for sure. But as you say, process over profits. But yeah, I'm glad to be here and I'm excited to kind of talk about some stuff.
Awesome. So I guess let's start from the top. How did you first come across trading and what got you hooked into this industry?
As you know, I kind of found it in high school. It was a little bit around that COVID time. And for me, what it was is, classes were getting canceled. We had random stuff happening online. So there was just so much time to just go into other things and dwell in other stuff. Like I used to always play sports, through high school. I used to game a lot. And I don't know if it's just me, but a lot of traders I see are, ex-gamers or people who also still game just because of that whole idea of, you have this mission to accomplish and you're just constantly going for that scoreboard higher and higher. So for me, that's what it was. And on top of that, I'm like, okay, it's like a video game, but I can make money from it. So it was like a no-brainer almost for me.
Yeah, I completely agree. Actually, I see it kind of in a similar way in terms of like the video game mindset. So yeah, I
Yeah.
completely agree. I think a lot of people are like that in trading. And just curious, what were those like early months or years like for you? Was it a lot of trial and error, or did you manage to pick it up quite quickly?
So back then, like I'd say like right now, the whole space, like we have a lot more coaches in the space, mentors in the space. And obviously there were those back then too, but it wasn't as mainstream. I remember when I was first using Webull, like I don't even think it had paper trading. So you know what's gonna happen. It's like you're gonna throw some
Yeah.
money in the brokerage account, it's gonna blow. One thing I was very good at off rip was whenever I made any profits, like on my Robinhood account or the Webull account, even if it was like $20, I would just withdraw it. So what would happen is I was 100% blowing accounts, but I was able to some extent kind of recycle it over and over again. So I definitely wasn't making any money. I was definitely losing money, but because of kind of keeping that scarce mindset in the start, I was able to kind of refresh that account over and over again just because I was able to keep those small amounts. And it definitely got smaller and smaller and smaller. And I had to kind of reset it maybe once or twice along the way. But generally, that small thing of not trying to, make thousands of dollars, but instead of just stay alive really kind of helped me in the start.
That's awesome. I definitely can't relate on that one, but yeah. And was there sort of a specific turning point for you when things almost started to click for you?
Yeah, so for me, it actually started with penny stocks. Like that's what I got started in. And part of the reason was because again, I started around the time, or I got more into trading around the time of when, the whole AMC GME thing happened. So it was really easy to kind of get into the penny stock side and stuff like that. My first options trade actually was on AMC, honestly. Besides, some bio stocks here and there. But the first couple of dollars that I actually made were off bio stocks, just the penny stocks, because they were so easy to get into. It's like a couple of dollars. You throw some in there, maybe it goes 50%, maybe it doubles with those penny stocks. It's just crazy. Yeah, it started with that. But as far as like a moment of it clicking, honestly, ironically enough, it's like every single time I thought I was becoming profitable wasn't when I was becoming profitable. And when I actually became profitable, I didn't really feel like I was profitable.
Yeah, yeah. I completely get you on that one. Where in your journey, what sort of time frame did you think, okay, maybe I can go about this full time?
Yeah, so for me, kind of as far as my timeline goes, so I started in high school, kind of did it through high school. I graduated high school around like when I was 17 years old. So I kind of came into college around that time. When I was in college is like when I really kind of started putting more time into it because again, there was just so much time freedom. I actually, had the mornings open, unlike in school where I had to kind of hide my phone from a teacher or something. But in college, I could actually sit down on a computer and trade. But the thing with full-time trading is even now, like at this point, I've never like thought of trading as like a full-time thing in the sense that it definitely makes more money than anything I've ever done. But the time it takes out of the day never made me kind of place it as like a full-time thing in my brain. But
Yeah.
from a monetary perspective, I'd say around that um, end of freshman, sophomore year of college. So around when I was like 18-ish, 19 years old is kind of when it felt like, okay, if I wanted to, I could drop everything and just kind of pursue this only.
Yeah, that's awesome. And following on from that, obviously going
Mhm.
into a little bit more of your sort of trading process, then you said about how obviously you don't really see it as a sort of side gig or anything. Do you have like anything else to sort of fill out your day, if that makes sense, to keep you away from the charts or?
Funny enough, college made that really easy because college's schedule is just perfect. Now I'm still kind of playing with it because I just graduated in December last year. So I'm still kind of getting used to having just the whole day empty. But during college, it was like, you trade, you go to a couple classes, you go to the gym, play some basketball or something, go out with friends. So it was just part of the schedule. Now it's like trading, because everyone's getting a job now coming out of college. Trading is kind of my job, but the job's only like 1 to 2 hours a day. So what do you do the whole day?
Yeah,
For me personally, I would say the main other thing I'm doing is kind of maybe making content or maybe doing kind of some mentoring and stuff like that. But generally speaking, it's a pretty open day. I'm still exploring like what to do with my day right now. But the one thing I make sure to do is I keep that trading time the same because a very big thing I've seen with people is as soon as they kind of take trading full time, at least for everybody I've seen, they instantly start over trading
yeah,
because now they're looking at it as, okay, I don't have to go to my job or I don't have to do this, so now I can trade more. And I've always looked at trading as a business where you're paid for leveraging the opportunity, not working a number of hours. So
yeah.
that's the one thing I stopped myself from, which is trading more just because I have more time.
So walk us through what your pre-market sort of plan is then. What's your process approaching the market? Do you have anything that sort of non-negotiables that you have, anything like that?
I personally generally do it the night before. Market opens right now like 6:30 for me, which I'm up by then most times, but it's like no one wants to sit down like an hour before that now and also kind of set up. So for
Yeah,
me personally, like the night before, I like to kind of just use those regular hour time frames and just plot out the main things like a game plan for the next day of, simply just targeting, okay, we have these levels here and here. What do we want to kind of do off of that? So not putting too much bias on something, but just placing some options of like what I want to do because that prevents you then from making impulse decisions right there and then. Like now you have like, okay, I could do A, I could do B, I could do C, I could do D, but if there's nothing there, now you could kind of click buttons anywhere essentially.
do you have sort of like a routine for improvement in your trading? Obviously, I know that now you've got to a certain point, but do you obviously journal, track, or have any systems in place to sort of stay sharp?
Yeah, 100%. I think trading is one of those games where you can never master it. And a true good trader knows the fact that you have to go ahead and constantly refine your system and constantly adapt to the market conditions. Like, obviously right now is a completely different market for a lot of people. Most people haven't even traded where the market goes down in the first place. So
Yeah,
it's a big thing. And even for someone like me who has done that, it's like a little bit of a shift because it hasn't been very frequent recently. But for me, TradeZella obviously is going to be my main thing where I'm kind of doing everything. If not daily, based on the day, I will weekly be kind of going in and kind of journaling my trades one way or the other, whether that's actually going into each singular trade on TradeZella and marking out the thought process for each trade that I had, or at least kind of spending 5, 10 minutes looking through each trade and going like, okay, what went through my mind for this trade? So that's like kind of a non-negotiable for me. If I have trades done, I have to go ahead and apply reasoning to them because what I've noticed personally for me and with a lot of, students in the past before too, is when you go ahead and you take a trade you make money on and you inherently don't know why you made money on it, it actually hurts you in the long run
yeah,
because you keep trying to chase that profit, but you're not chasing that system So now you have nothing kind of tying them together essentially. So for me, it's like a non-negotiable to apply reason to every trade before, and then if something happens and I didn't apply it beforehand, 100% apply the reasoning afterwards and look at why it worked or why it failed.
That's a really great tip. Thank you for that. Someone who obviously does, go quite deeply into their process and review their trades. Is there any questions you could give to someone when they're reviewing their trades to basically help them review better and learn better from the trades that obviously they've taken?
Definitely. So I'd say the biggest issue that people have when they're journaling is they put down their entry, they put down their exit, and that's like their journal they did. But what's really important is why did you enter there? Why did you exit where you did? Was that the actual point where you wanted to exit, or was it like an impulse decision? And if you had like a stop loss or like an invalidation of that trade, what would that have been? Because a lot of these times people go ahead and they preset like, hey, I'm going to enter here, I'm going to exit here, and my stop loss would have been here. And yes, the trade worked out in your favor, but if that stop loss would have hit, why was that the right spot to exit? Was it just because it's a 10-point stop loss, or was it because that's the actual invalidation of your trade? So I think it's really important to identify and validate those three things, or those four things actually. What's your stop loss? What's your entry? What's your exit? What's your take profit? And why are those there at those specific spots?
Are you someone that dives into sort of the emotional and psychology side of it as well, or are you purely mostly focused on technicals?
Definitely. So I kind of have like a mixed opinion when it comes to the psychology of stuff, in the sense that I think it's very important, meaning like, if my mind's not there going to the training day, whether I had an argument with someone the day before or, I had something happen at night, I was tilted, whatever, it's gonna bleed into the next day. That's human emotion for sure. But I also believe that lately what's been happening is people have been brushing off losses that are inherently mechanical mistakes or, system mistakes and blaming it on psychology. Like they will, take a really poor entry and they'll get stopped out and it'll go towards their target and they'll say, I got emotional and it should have worked out. I just got emotional and got out. When the reality is that had they taken a better entry in the first place, that stop loss would not have hit. So a lot of times it's important to find that balance between what's like a psychological issue and what's actually a systematic issue when it comes to your trading. Because if you start to kind of play the blame game too extreme in either direction, you're not going to kind of get anywhere as far as progress goes.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Yeah, completely agree. I'm sure everyone watching it now at this point is extremely curious about how you actually trade. So, would you
Mhm.
mind us obviously diving into a little bit into your trading strategy and you walking us through a little bit how you actually trade?
Sure, yeah. So I'm a very simple trader. I know the most popular thing right now is, ICT concepts and, fair value gaps and stuff like that. And we could rant about that all day, but I don't want to get too into that. But pretty much, for me personally, I'm a very simple trader. I have, horizontal lines on my screen just going across at key pivot points. I like to draw levels on the daily chart and the hourly chart simply because I'm not a scalper. I like to go for those intraday swings, so those bigger moves throughout the day. And for that, it's important to kind of mainly identify those bigger kind of range levels essentially. So like I was saying earlier, as part of my pre-day plan, I'll go and draw those levels, and then I'll have some sort of game plan set. And as far as like the actual style of my trading goes, I am very strictly a reversal trader. I'm not really a continuation trader. I'm a reversal trader. So I'll still look to kind of play the overall trend of the market, whether that's on the hourly or daily chart overall trend, but I'm looking to play the reversal. So if the market's been dumping recently, I will look for those pops to kind of short back down on those higher time frames. And even today, that's kind of what I did. Even though we had a massive gap up, and a lot of people were looking to play a gap continuation because of the good news. My logic is we've been in a downtrend. We're retesting these higher levels, and I'm going to look to kind of short that potentially. And if it doesn't work, I'll find out very quickly because it's a reversal trade. So if it just
Yeah.
kind of breaks back above, I'll know it's like not valid essentially. So this is an example of kind of how I would be journaling. And obviously I've kind of added a little bit more things lately as far as like my style of journaling goes and stuff like that. But this is kind of the core way I was journaling when I had my pretty much my personal best month ever. And every single trade this month I kind of journaled. But to kind of give some context here, I used to do a lot of this too, which is the thoughts of the day. So
Hmm.
now I do a little bit even more in depth, like I was talking about, like, the entry, the exit, and stuff like that. But this feels just as valuable because I'm able to kind of put onto paper what my thoughts are. So over here, I kind of said today was played extremely well. I took shorts off the open to add some extra drawdown to the fresh account. So this would trade out on these, these prop accounts, these funded accounts. So my logic going into this was I need to add some extra drawdown because I'm looking to play a pretty high range trade essentially, as you can kind of later on see. So I went for a short off market open, and this is a perfectly similar trade to today, where we have kind of this weak gap up to where you can kind of see where we had a gap up from the previous close, but we're still kind of below this general area here, which I would consider a higher time frame level essentially, which you can see is what caused this kind of breakdown later. So since we're below that, my brain is still kind of focusing on shorts. Meanwhile, a lot of people are at open or longing into this, hoping it goes higher. So I shorted that into this zone down here. And again, this zone is the same logic of those higher time frame levels, where this is the main area where we kind of chopped the previous day. So I went ahead and kind of just played the zone there. So once we had that zone, I kind of flipped into longs, and this is kind of where my reversal trader mentality kind of comes in, to where I've identified that the trend was down, but I've seen strength here for a potential shift in trend, and I can kind of play the reversal there on top of the fact that I already have profits and I can leverage those. So I went ahead and I longed that here, and my initial take profit, honestly, was around this area over here. But for me, I held through that simply because the shorts had already failed the initial thesis, right? The initial thesis was the fact that this area up here is going to get respected for going lower, which happened. But the fact that this area held showed me that buyers are present and they're likely not going to stop at this location again, especially the way these candlesticks were moving, which is why I targeted higher. And over here, you can see this was pretty much like a perfect exit for me. Longer time frame, we obviously still know that we have these major levels up here where the trend could continue down. So I personally just took an exit here. And that pretty much kind of sums up my way of approaching it, where you can kind of see this is a pretty long trade. Like I entered this somewhere around 6:54 my time and I was out of it like 7:33. And I'm not going for those 1-2 minute trades unless they're a loss, obviously. But generally, I'm going for these bigger kind of moves here. And yeah, it obviously worked out perfectly in this scenario. But that's my way of approaching it, where I'm just looking to play reversals with the general trend, essentially.
How obviously you manage risk? Are you more structured with your risk or pretty discretionary with it?
So it's definitely a little discretionary in the sense that I don't have point stop losses. And I think this market is a very good wake up call to a lot of people who use point based stop losses, as far as, at least keeping the same point base every single day. Because, as VIX goes up, which again, a lot of people don't look at for some reason, your volatility goes up. So unlike options, your futures contracts are linear, meaning whenever VIX goes up, your contracts they're not going to just automatically adjust on futures. So all of a sudden, your 10-point take profits on ES are now going to become at minimum 30, 40 points on the chart. So you obviously can't keep the same stop loss you had with a 10-point TP as a 40-point TP. So for me, it really comes back down to invalidation, which in this regard would be, okay, if I enter longs here, I want to see some invalidation of this general zone here in order to kind of stop out of this trade. So less point based and dollar based, more based on what is the chart telling me to get out of this trade or to kind of get into this trade.
Is this kind of like your go-to setup here? Would you say this is like A plus for you?
Yes and no. In the sense that again, I'm pretty discretionary as far as the trades go. Like I will take different types of setups or models that people like to call it. I don't have a one set model. It's A plus in the sense that it's a perfect retest of a level with a very clear indication of strength here, which makes it very, very A plus, I guess, to go ahead and long. So my bread and butter setup, I guess you would say, would be a retest of a higher time frame feeding into a reversal of some sort. That's kind of what I would say is my A plus setup, really.
When you look back at sort of your trading and your trading strategy, what would you say has changed the most in how you sort of approach your strategy in the market?
Definitely. So I'd say one big thing is the reversal part where, I've been a reversal trader for a while now, but until I started playing purely reversals, I simply was just not as profitable because there was too much room for error on that trade potentially. Like I had too much kind of room to give it to invalidate because I never used, dollar based or point based stop losses. So for me personally, the continuation trading wasn't working that well because I would keep waiting for the invalidation. And this trade's a perfect example. Like I was saying, so many people were longing probably at this gap up here. And obviously it worked out later on, but for me, like I would have had to held a hold all the way, below this zone in order to invalidate a long that I might have entered at market open for continuation. Versus for reversal, since I'm entering here, it's not that much risk to wait for this invalidation. So the invalidation
Yeah.
remains the same, but the risk kind of increases if I play continuation essentially.
It sounds like obviously you've done a fair bit of optimization. Have you ever gone through sort of a phase of where you tried to over optimize your strategy?
Yeah, definitely. And I personally feel, and people can disagree, but I feel that no matter how good of a trader you become, every time you're in a slump, you try to kind of change something up in the strategy. And I think that's something a lot of beginners don't realize is that even when you become profitable, even when your strategy is working, those weeks it's not working, or those days it's not working, you start blaming the strategy and you don't spend enough time looking into if you actually even followed the strategy. And I can firmly say that any actual proper losses I have, which are like, not just, getting wicked out or me kind of just selling early off emotions, any proper losses that I have not been because I followed the strategy to a T. They have been because I'm kind of swaying away from the strategy. So I definitely am victim to that whenever I kind of have a little bit of a slump. Even recently, when I had a slump in the start of April, end of March, before I kind of had a very good bounce back, that's kind of what I was doing. I was trying to, change things up. I was trying to play some continuation trades here and there because I wasn't realizing that I'm just not doing what I'm good at doing, which is playing the reversals properly. And I'm chasing, these massive dumps that everybody else is chasing. And that's just not what I am very, very good at, essentially.
Yeah. So you got to obviously stick what works for you and, kind of ignore the noise. How is it that you sort of handle tough days or losing streaks? What sort of keeps you grounded there?
The main thing is going to be just the data, and that's where TradeZella helps a lot. Like honestly, like I'll have a bad day and I'll load up my TradeZella, I'll go to all time and I'll just look at the graph, and that will kind of remind me that okay, you know what you're doing, Josh. You clearly make money trading. One bad day is not going to change a skill set that you have now that you can keep for a lifetime essentially. So that would be number one. Number two, I don't think is talked about a lot, especially within coaches, is a lot of times I'll have a red day and someone I taught will have a green day. And that just kind of reassures the fact that what I have works because they're obviously trading my style since I taught them. And if I have a red day and they have a green day and they play the system and the strategy to a T, that's just another reminder that hey, what you have works. You probably, screwed something up today where you did not follow your rules, and that's why this happened. Don't overcomplicate it. And
Yeah.
that's what keeps it simple for me, honestly.
And how was, since obviously you started, how's your relationship with sort of your emotions and risks changed from then till now?
It's an interesting journey because it's kind of like a curve where you feel like it's going this way, where your risk, your emotion control is this way, but every once in a while you will oversize and it'll kind of go like this and it'll drop.
Yeah.
And it just comes back to the same thing where I'm a firm believer in the struggles you face when you're unprofitable to some extent do remain even when you're profitable because they just come back to just basic human principles. If you risk half your bank account in a trade, even if you're the best trader on the planet, you're going to be very emotional. And if you're someone making 500K a year and you risk, $100 a trade, you might also be one of those people who might not become profitable because now there's no emotion in the trade. So finding that balance to me is a very, very hard thing, which is why whenever I work with somebody, I really try to figure out what their situation is like, whether that's financial, just general kind of day-to-day situation, because everyone's goal is to become this robot, emotionless trader. But in reality, you do need a little bit of emotion. You need that middle ground to where you care enough to where you're not going to round trip an amazing trade, but you don't care too much to where you're just going to, trail the stop loss 1 point every single time it moves in your direction, essentially. So I think that balance is very important, and people kind of look over the fact that some level of emotion is important to being a good trader.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I completely agree. That's not spoke about enough in the space at all. So discipline, obviously, that word goes around a lot in trading. And
Hmm.
in your eyes, what sort of extent does discipline play in your edge, and how do you sort of maintain it?
I think it's very important, and I often compare, like, I've compared trading to, sports. Compared it to gaming, and one thing they all have is that there's a set of rules, and they might not always be mechanical, but there's pretty much like a list you kind of live by in order to kind of function properly. If you're playing a sport, you have certain things that your coach expects you to do, and that's why often they won't get mad about the loss. They'll get mad about how you lost. And I think
Yeah,
the same is important in trading, where again, I think one of the biggest issues I've been seeing, across, Twitter recently is people will have a red day or their whole calendar will be red, and they acknowledge the fact that they're red, but they're still brushing it off as like losses are part of the game. And again, it's about balance. Everything in life is about balance, and if your whole calendar is red, I've had that before, obviously, but it's never going to be a thing where it's just because losses happen. If your whole
yeah,
calendar is ready, if you have 20 red days, there is something besides just the fact that losses happen in trading that's causing that to happen. And identifying that, where what's the difference between just having losses as part of the game and what is, having actual losses that you can fix, is very important. And obviously, you're not going to know every single one of which is which. So the best thing you can do to help yourself is go ahead and journal every single one, and then go ahead and see, okay, which ones are causing real losses and which ones are kind of just part of the probability game.
awesome, really insightful. Thank you. So, what's
Mhm.
one thing you wish someone told you when you were first starting out trading? If you could go back to year one, what one piece of advice would you give yourself?
Honestly, and I know this is going to sound corny, um, there's probably two main things. One is get a mentor. And the reason I say that is because, yes, they weren't as available when I started, but there was still like an inherent ego. Like, I knew people who were trading well, I knew people who were making money trading, but there was this always just a little bit of ego where, like, I'm going to figure this out myself. And I did, I 100% figured it out myself. But the amount of mental stress along the way and the amount of, this toll that had on my brain and just the amount of time I spent becoming profitable would have easily been cut in half if I just listened to people who already went through what I went through. So
Yeah,
that would be the first thing, which, again, I don't expect anyone to, watch this and go ahead and be like, okay, I'm gonna go get a mentor. But
yeah, yeah. I know.
everybody realizes that, after you've been through it for a couple of years, like, shoot, maybe I should have listened to that one old dude who knew what he was doing, essentially.
Yeah,
Um, the second thing I would say is, just like the name of this right here, process over profits. Um, it's very easy to get stuck up in the amount of money you can make trading. I would even go as far as to say, like, if you need to go ahead and delete stuff like Twitter, go ahead and do it. When I'm in a slump, I was just talking about this in my recent tweet, is I deleted everything. I went ahead and I deleted Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. The only thing I had open was Discord because that's kind of where I have my charts and stuff. But I deleted everything because seeing how other people are doing hurts you a lot. And people don't show their losses. It's human nature. People show the best of themselves. So when you go on Twitter and you see, a 10K day or a 30K day from some kid who you thought was just a beginner, he's not showing you the fact that he might maybe lost 20K last month or how long he's been trading. So that kind of goes into the back of your head and you're like, okay, now I need to go for this because I think I'm at the same level. When
Yeah.
instead you should just be focused on, hey, did I have a green day today? And did I trade properly? Because you can always make more. There's always a bigger fish. I had a 122K week or month or whatever, and then I have some friend who did that in a day. So there's always going to be someone else who's bigger. So if you keep chasing that dopamine, you're never going to become a profitable trader. And for me, that plus the fact of I stopped trying to make my money back. That I know you asked before, like what clicked for me. I didn't realize it in the moment, but if you go back to my P&L and stuff, I became a profitable trader when I stopped looking at my all-time chart and trying to make it green, and I focused more on coming in every single day and looking to just become a better trader essentially. And that for me was kind of just the turning point essentially.
What do you think something that maybe newer traders spend too much time on and then maybe not enough on?
Too much time, 100% back testing. I think that back testing is great. I do it myself sometimes, obviously I've used TradeZella for it, but people do it incorrectly in the sense that they'll go back 2 days from the stuff that they've already seen. And it's just cope, it's the cope in the sense that you go back 2 days, you already know how that price action happened, and you convince yourself that you know what you're doing by, click, 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 click one candle at a time. TradeZilla has, the 1 second charts as far as like the update goes on the back testing. So you should have it on that to kind of make it the same as real time as close as you can. Go back to a random time that you haven't traded before, maybe like before you were trading. Open up the charts and be honest with yourself. I think being honest with yourself is the most important part. And don't get stuck in fake back testing, like I said, of like just looking back a couple of days or something you remember and then convincing yourself you know how to trade because you kind of intentionally went through that. So that's something that people spend too much time doing, in my opinion. What people don't spend enough time doing is reasoning on trades that they won and reasoning on trades that they lost. Those extremes are the most important. The trades you made the most money on and the trades you lost the most money on. The outliers are always going to be the most useful thing you can have. 2 years ago, I personally had a notebook. It was called the Loss Journal. And all it had was every single loss, just boom, 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 boom. Every single loss I had, it went in there. I would take, a page or half a page and just write it out. And I have always been a higher win rate trader. And obviously,
Yeah.
what that means is when you were unprofitable, your losers were very big, even if your win rate was high. And what that made me do is really dig deep into every single loss, even if some of them weren't my fault. Some news candle happens randomly. I went in and I'm like, okay, what could I myself have possibly done different? Because obviously I can't directly control the outcome, but let me focus on what I can control. And just sitting and just journaling out every single loss and the reasoning for it really helped me. So putting a little bit more weight on those losses and not completely brushing them off is something recently that I think people can spend a little bit more time doing.
Thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed this interview today. Um,
Definitely, yeah.
Yash, I really appreciate you coming on and breaking everything down from obviously your process to your mindset to your strategy. It's been a solid insight all around today. For anyone listening, obviously make sure to go follow in on X. Do you just want to shout out your username quick?
Sure, it's just Yash Trades with a Z at the end. But yeah,
Awesome. Appreciate you so much for coming on and obviously take care.
awesome. Thank you. Yeah.